So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smarter Campus podcast, where we're changing education one conversation at a time. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Michelle Miller, a professor of psychological sciences at Northern Arizona State University, an acclaimed author and a thought leader in the instructional technology and cognitive psychology space. It's an honor to be here with you today, Dr. Miller. You could just give the viewers a little introduction of yourself, then we can jump into it.
Thank you, Zach. It's an honor to be here as well. I've had so much fun in our previous conversations connecting with you over a variety of ideas and concepts and applications. So yes, I'm a professor of psychological sciences at Northern Arizona University in the United States. I started out my career doing basic research in cognitive psychology, which is the field that deals with memory, attention, language, and so on. But really, for the most of the my career at NAU, I've focused on kind of taking the findings of that body of work and putting it in the hands of people who can apply it to bring more opportunities and more success to students all around the world. So that's really my passion. I was working with fellow faculty and leaders in this space, and also looking at how technology can be a part of that mission as well.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so excited you're here today. So, first question, you kind of mentioned technology, and I know AI has kind of been a big word in the technology space for the last few years. How'd you get into the AI space?
Well, it's funny. It's almost like a little bit of a bookend as far as my own career goes, since I did start out in this field of cognitive psychology, and that's always had this dialogue with, since it's part of an even bigger interdisciplinary field, cognitive science. There's always been this vibrant dialogue between psychology, especially the type of research psychology that I do, computer science, and even philosophy and linguistics. So that's where a lot of rich work has happened in our field. And I remember, I mean, back when I started out, we said, well, in theory, an artificial intelligence system could kind of instantiate a lot of the processes that we think are going on and in the mind and maybe even in the brain. And in theory, you could have a big system that could develop its own ways of generating new responses and who knows even what, simply based on training kind of units in
Yeah.
a system without a whole lot of top-down interference. So we said, oh, this could happen. And then I walked away for 20 plus years. And then I woke up one day, like a lot of us in the field did, and go, oh my gosh, they did it. Look at this. So, I mean, that coming together is what really has drawn me into this. And of course, the practical realities of well, as I said, with the faculty development and the pedagogy and educational technology piece as well.
Well, how have you seen, you said you woke up one day, like how did the space change, would you say, when you woke up that one day?
Well, the general news media, which like most of us, I try to stay a little dialed into. Uh, I mean, of course, with Chat GPT, that
Yep.
was, came and made the national news. Now, for me, though, I mean, there's it hit in a particularly specific way because I've been working in this ed
Yeah.
tech space for, 10, 15 years now.
Yeah.
I'll try to say this tactfully. I mean, people in this area, we see a lot of
Yeah.
like disrupt. This is going to disrupt everything. And I remember in particular, like when I was writing the book Minds Online, which was published in 2014, in the run up to that, MOOCs, massive open online courses, those were a big trend, for example. And I mean, my editor was sending me, she's like, here's more news on MOOCs, here's more news on MOOCs. And some people were saying, oh, well, they'll close all the universities. We'll just have MOOCs. And that is, if not a flash in the pan, it played out in a very different way. So we've heard a lot of this. We've heard whiteboards. If you
Yeah.
remember those were going to change everything. And so I came to it with a real blend of skepticism
Yep.
and you got to show me. So through that and in dialogue with fellow faculty and with folks like yourself who really are out there at the cutting edge of the development in the industry itself, I've come to say, okay, now this is no whiteboard. This is
Yeah.
cardboard. This is this is beyond MOOCs. This really is a unique innovation.
Yeah. So do you think this is the biggest innovation in like the ed tech space that's been?
Oh, I don't know. I think we're galloping towards a photo finish. If anything, I mean, I think the development of LMSs, learning management systems,
Yeah.
that was big as well. And when kind of Web 2.0 and multimedia was put in the
Yeah.
hands, I mean, we had to have laboratory quality equipment just to do like basic recordings for things like our speech perception experiments.
Yeah.
And when that the floodgates opened on that, that was also really, really big. And I think that that's a sort of an unsung hero, by the way, in
Yeah.
all of this. So I don't know if I'm ready to declare
To
the winner
answer.
yet, but at least it's kind of up in that rarefied company.
Yeah. I mean, so one question I have is you probably deal with a lot of the fear and skepticism around these
Hmm.
technologies, right? Like, how do you handle like introducing new technologies to people that are kind of like worried about it, right? Or scared that it's gonna, online universities are gonna
Yeah.
close all colleges.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think we have to approach it respectfully. We can't just say,
Yeah.
"Oh, people don't want to do anything." That's a trope that I've gotten pretty tired of myself.
Yeah.
First of all, it's ageist. There's some stereotypes of like, "Oh, it's the senior professors who don't
Yeah.
want to try anything." That's absolutely not my experience. When I lead a workshop, believe me, the senior folks are often the ones who have the space and the interest and the creativity to be interested in it.
Yeah.
So we don't want to just dismiss it and say, oh, you just don't get it and you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So honoring that, I think as well, inviting people to explore through the disciplines. Another thing that I've talked a lot about over the last year is like it's not as effective to just say, all right, everybody use AI in teaching and prepare students for an AI future. Well, okay, I can't do that. As I'm a psychologist, I can prepare students to incorporate AI and consider it in that context and to
Yeah.
perhaps use it in their future psychology careers. And so narrowing it down in a way that's productive. So instead of like, should we have AI in the world? It's a great question, but it's not necessarily the question at hand. We're talking about practical introductions,
Yeah.
narrowing it down AI in this field, this context, or to have a cross-disciplinary to say to develop student critical thinking skills. All right, we've
Yeah.
narrowed it down and now we can kind of get our arms around that. But there too, inviting people and being respectfully open to if they say, well, here's the problem with that, or here's my concern with that as well. I think that those things are key.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. It's funny. A lot of the people I talked to said the same thing where it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, everyone thinks the senior professors are the worst, but really they're the ones that are just looking to learn things, which
Hmm.
is, I don't know, it's interesting. So next
Yeah.
one is like, it's a really interesting workforce now, right? Like a lot
Hmm.
of hard skills can now be translated to soft skills with AI. Like, how do you think educators can best kind of bridge the gap between workforce and education using AI?
Well, here too, I think it's perhaps not as productive or maybe not even fair to say, okay, professors have to pull out a crystal ball to say, what is somebody going to be doing in their workplace 10 years from now? And I mean, taking the long view back, I mean, haven't we seen this before too I mean, back when it was HTML,
Yeah,
what we need is to train everybody to use HTML. Well, we can back up from that a little bit and say, I don't, we've always needed to say, well, we don't know what the workplace opportunities are going to be 10 years from now, but
yeah,
we can give students the metacognitive ability to learn, the self-knowledge of their strengths and weaknesses and develop some a little bit more overarching skills. So I think kind of refining the goal a little bit there as well. Instead of saying, well, you figure it out, tell me what a worker in your area is going to need to do in 10 years. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows.
yeah,
But then going first. I mean, and that's what we do in a lot of areas. If I'm teaching research methods in psychology, teaching students to design experiments, I'm going to draw on my own background in doing that, and I'm going to stay fresh in my own skills and say, oh, what new
Yeah.
tools or constraints are coming down the pike in this area. So again, kind of saying, don't go general. Don't expect us to predict magically, but to say like right now, in the work that you're doing, that you're already sharing with students or bringing students in, where does AI fit into that?
Yeah.
And then making the space to deliberately guide students into those specific areas.
Yeah. I mean, that's wonderful. So then what's like one way that you've integrated that kind of with your students, right?
hmm Well, and I'll say I'm at a I don't know whether to call this a disadvantage or a privilege. I'm on sabbatical right now, one of these very
Yeah.
rare, once in a, 8 or 9 years. So I'm on a little bit of a stop out. And given that this is such a rapidly developing
Yeah.
area,
Oh my
just being
God.
not having my own ready-made set of classes to work with over this 1 year period puts me in a slightly different footing. But I
Yeah.
will say in my early exploration, probably what I'll also be particularly concentrating on in the future is I've had the very exciting opportunity to begin teaching in our fully online writing and psychological sciences course. Really important course for students to learn to do not just all writing, but a very specific kind of writing. And to do that writing, what people often give a little bit of short shrift to is that you have to be able to research and synthesize research in a
Yeah.
field. So that's what I'm there to help students do. And in a way that's also workforce or for graduate school. That's going to be
Yeah.
very, very important. That's the skill. So in the past, I did very rudimentary, like gave some alternatives initially, recognizing that some students maybe would be hesitant, but
Yeah.
to say, we're not going to write your papers, AI is not going to do the teaching for me here, but to give students a structure to do some really crucial revision. And
Yeah.
this is an area that here too, it's so easy to say, okay, just produce this paper and give it to me at the end of the semester. And we give lip service to revision as being so important to that, but we rarely have enough structured practice. Just telling students to revise is not going to work for a lot of them.
Yeah.
So, to guide them through how can even a very basic tool like ChatGPT, how can you use that to look at what you yourself have written and
Yep.
researched so far and to look at the structure and the flow, which is a core issue that we see time and again in this class. The sentences are all okay, but the whole thing doesn't hang together. So
Yeah.
that's what I've done before. And in the future, I'm also really excited to start looking at AI research assistants and to mix and match those with the other research tools we use, such as PsycInfo in this type of course.
Yeah. Well, how do you teach students? Because I know a huge issue is that like, especially with research, right? It
Mhm.
makes stuff up sometimes. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
How do you have students like still keep that critical thinking within that
hmm
research process while also
Yeah.
using it?
Yeah, and I think that this is really an area you've identified something that I think we do need to keep an ongoing dialogue. I think the pitfall here is going to be telling students, "Oh, go, use AI for this, that, and the other," but also be careful.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. It's like be careful is never good advice for
Yeah.
for anything, is it? You need to say be more specific than that. For me, I think it's a very holistic approach. Again, in the context of teaching something like scientific writing, um, I- to make it of a piece with a larger, more very articulated assignment. So if I'm sending students away and saying, "Oh my gosh, you have a paper due tomorrow. I'll never accept anything late, and it's got to be about X, Y, and Z." Um, use ChatGPT, sanctioned or not, use
Yeah.
ChatGPT to
Yeah.
write. That's a recipe for, okay, I get papers that are full of all sorts of things, and they didn't heed my be careful advice. But let's say that, I mean, if the class is already structured the way that I think that it should be, to say, first we're going to develop ideas, and I may have a meeting with you face to face to say, tell me about your ideas, and I'll give you some advice on what to look for next. Give me an outline. Show me your reading notes. as we do that, that's where I can give them, incorporate more specific advice and say, okay, and here's where we're going to use this research tool
Yeah.
to maybe synthesize some stuff here. And did you cross-check it against this? And I want to know that you read the original article too. I mean, if students are already not doing that, I mean, it's not an AI problem at that point,
Yeah.
but that's an example of how we can, if not totally filter it all out, we can help prevent it. And I think we'll also see more professors doing things like having you compare and contrast. How did this search work out in PsycInfo? What did it tell you when you researched, say, childhood trauma or anxiety disorders? What did you come up with here? What did you come up with here? And what does that tell you? And I'm cooking up some assignments that invite students to do that specifically as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's super cool to see what people are doing. So a kind of a big question as we kind of come up on time.
Hmm.
This is well, throws people off, but like if you could snap your fingers and change one
Yeah.
thing in the education system, what would you do?
Oh my goodness, it really does throw us for a loop. I would, I think I would recenter uh, care for students and
Yeah,
extremely skilled, informed, and I'm going to say evidence-based teaching at the absolute center of our mission. And care for students takes many forms.
yeah,
It's in how we communicate with them, uh, how we structure our classes for success of, and inclusion.
yeah,
And I'm going to say too that something like preparing students for what they want to do next, be it graduate school, a career in the arts, a career in a particular workforce or field, I think that's part of care as well. And sometimes that can get sold as like, oh, well, we're just training students for some faceless future that maybe it doesn't even appeal to us. It doesn't have to be that way.
yeah,
So if we could do that, I think that that would go a long way towards ensuring that we continue to be relevant and continue to really do what attracted us into this field in the first place.
yeah. I mean, that's great. I think that's like kind of that conversation gets lost a lot, right? Like, why did
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
I ask this to professors all the time. It's like, why did you become a teacher? And
Hmm.
it's not, yeah. I mean, I'll honestly ask you that question. Why did you become an educator?
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, I came to it. I think it was something that was always there. I always wanted to be, a communicator as
Yeah,
well. Um, and I'll just say, since it was a long time ago, when I came up in the field, it was very much like teaching is just a way to pay the bills. Don't get too involved with it. Get in, get out. That's what it was. And that advice was given to me in very good faith for how to have
yeah,
a quote unquote good, respectable career. Um, and so I got to go around almost wandering in the wilderness for a while.
yeah,
And then I landed what to me was a real dream job. I love my institution. I said, this place is about students. Research is very important, but this is the best thing I can do. And then to take that as well, say, here's what I've learned. I was also sold on the idea that you were either a natural teaching and you just walk in and it was going to come to you easily, or you weren't. And if you weren't, better even double, triple down on your research so that
yeah,
this thing wouldn't interfere with your professional life. I'm not a natural. And that dawned on me as well, that you can still learn and do really, really well. And this stuff is teachable and learnable.
yeah.
That's what I wanted to share with my fellow faculty. So that's what has really attracted it and drawn me back into what was probably a kernel of interest and passion all along.
That's awesome. That's super cool. It's fun to hear those
Oh,
stories.
I agree.
So last question I got for you. Uh, what's the number one way you use AI outside of education? It's kind of a fun one. I use like my example is I use it for cooking all the time. I
Oh,
use it to like make recipes.
well, and here there's some blurry lines.
Yeah,
Because where my professional interest and my personal interest one leaves off,
Align.
one picks up.
Yeah.
Outside of this, so far, I've mostly used it to help derive kind of action plans. Like,
Yep.
boy, we always, I feel like most of us have those areas in our life, like here's a stubborn problem, personal or, problem
Yeah.
in your house or even a financial issue. You're like, I don't understand this. Um, and I want to understand better. So making an action plan, and man, this is going to lead me right back to square one, but self-teaching. I've really gotten very interested in what can I do to help myself
Yeah.
learn. I consider myself a lifelong learner, but I'm not always one to sit down and sign up for, a semester long class or even
Yeah.
let alone a degree in something new. But like I'm creating a little mini course for myself on the United States Constitution, which is an area of interest to
Super
me,
cool.
totally
Yeah.
outside my field. And it's a meta interest too. I'm like, well, I got to observe myself as a learner. And so I have a setup that uses all my tricks of the trade to see how quickly can I learn this thing.
That's super cool.
Thanks.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's probably the coolest one. People often say like shopping or really
Yeah.
funny when I heard like 2, 3 weeks ago, someone uses ChatGPT to find coupon codes. Because it's like
Oh,
really good at searching the internet. So you can just like search for coupon
hmm.
codes. I don't know, yeah. But Dr. Miller, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, and I'll leave all of your contact information if anyone's interested in chatting further in the YouTube link. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you.